Hello everyone, I'm Corey and we're talking Manpower. Today I've got a very special guest with me. I've got Miss Ellen Helmerson. She's the Deputy Chief of Staff G8 at the United States Army Training and Doctorate Command. Miss Helmerson, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So could you explain to me a little bit about your role here at the G8 at TRADOC?
Right, so I serve as the Deputy Chief of Staff G8 at TRADOC, which is a Tier 2 Senior Executive Service position. So for the Training and Doctrine Command, I serve as their Chief Financial Officer. So anything to do with money, with acquisition, with manpower, with finances, with accounting, budgeted programming, I'm responsible for advising the Commanding General, Deputy Commanding General, and all our commanders in the field. I also serve as a Senior Acquisition Executive, so oversee all of the contract actions within the command, which is about half of our budget. I serve as a Senior Force Manager in the Manpower and Force Management domain, so kind of a broad spectrum that requires not just the financial management, controllership, manpower acquisition knowledge, but really requires kind of mission understanding, functional understanding, workload understanding across the domains that TRADOC has work in.
So how do you specifically use Manpower and Force Managers here?
Okay, so in TRADOC, we're kind of unique because most of the generating force falls in TRADOC. So about 14,000 civilians, 35,000 military, all in the generating force. So how we determine our manpower requirements, how we resource those requirements, how we modify those requirements are very important to the Training and Doctrine Command because one of our biggest issues is training. And those training loads change every year, and we require our Manpower and Force Managers to be able to articulate, do I need more drill sergeants? Do I need more instructors? Do I need more support personnel in order to get the work done? So they have a key role in determining our requirements and in determining how we're going to leverage our resources and how we're going to kind of maximize our workforce planning out there between military, civilian, and looking at outsourcing and insourcing for contracts.
So with the current downsizing environment, how do you bring together the dollars and manpower to keep TRADOC's structure and balance?
Well, we do it through collaboration because we can't do it in isolation. So although we have about an $8 billion budget that we're responsible for, which includes all the military pay, we can't determine the best ways to utilize that resource unless we have our manpower and our programming and our budgeting all working together to kind of look at options to optimize the use of those resources to help us predict what we're going to need in FY18 or what we're going to need in FY19 to 23 in our POM. We don't do that in isolation. We have to do it collectively. So Manpower and Force Managers can give us insight into organizational design. They can give us insight into the planning that's going on for total Army analysis that can affect the path we take in our programming and in our POM submission. They help us look at what I need next year to give to my centers in terms of resources from a manpower perspective, and where we have options to maybe do things differently, to offset some civilian reductions with military, to look at downsizing our civilians innovatively. One of the things that we do in the command is instead of just saying, hey, you have all your FY17 authorizations in 17, we actually give them a target of 18 and say you need to work towards that 18 target, and that's the money I'm going to give you. And that's kind of where our manpower guys give us good insight on where that's going to work and where that's not going to work.
Give them kind of a roadmap ahead of time so they don't have to hair on fire last minute making these decisions. They can kind of plan and be organized.
It doesn't become a personnel challenge with RIFs, but you actually are looking out towards the future and saying, this is where I need to start to transition towards.
So is there some sort of special considerations or challenges in keeping resources in balance here at TRADOC?
I think every command has that. You know, knowing what your resources are going to be the next year and knowing how to articulate and defend the resources you're going to need in the future. Almost every year, it's kind of like we got to figure out what we have. We got to figure out what our largest priorities are and how we resource those priorities. You know, a good example is right now. Back in March, we did our mid-year review for money, and we still have not gotten any money for mid-year, and we are now within 6 weeks of being at the end of the year. And so, how do you make good, deliberate decisions that are priority decisions that you must do this year? And so, the insights we get from the manpower community and the insights we get from the budget community help us make those determinations, and they help us balance those resources and balance the requirements and needs, right, and the highest priority needs to those resources that we have available. And I think that's basically, end of the year, what we're trying to do. And if we don't need the resources or they're not a high priority, then we need to be turning those into the department where every dollar counts, and they need to be able to use those resources for other purposes. So, big challenge right now.
So, what are some of the unique benefits and challenges of doing manpower and force management at TRADOC?
Yeah, so, many years ago, I was the chief of manpower at TRADOC, and the best job in the Army. That was always my dream job when I was an intern and after I was an intern, and now Ms. Anthony has that job. But I think there are some challenges, and the challenges are that we're getting smaller, right? So our Army is getting smaller in terms of force structure. We're getting more tight in terms of manpower, which means our civilian corps is getting smaller. But our missions aren't changing at the same rate. And so how do we make good, deliberate mission decisions that will help us affect our manpower needs? At the time we're, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to come down 100 military, now I'm going to figure out a way to do it, let's figure out what we could be doing differently, or what missions maybe need to be eliminated, or what are some different ways to get that work. And I think that's our biggest challenge with manpower right now, is getting the best utilization out of those resources, putting the right talent. And whether it's a military or civilian determination, whether it's a grade determination or a series determination, our manpower guys give us that expertise. So maybe I don't need as many officers in training or in instructor training, but maybe I need a different type of officer. Or maybe I need a different grade of officer, and I can do it with less than. So that's kind of, where we have to be a little innovative and not just like build the documents and do those kind of things, is really help our commanders find ways and means, leveraging manpower to do that. So I think that's one of our biggest challenges.
Being as innovative as possible, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we just have to look at it other than saying, hey, no, that's not on your TDA, you can't do it. No, let's figure out what you can do and what flexibilities you have and how you work with the personnel community in order to ensure fill from the military, or, ability to assess from the civilian side. And how do I help inform the budget community so I make sure I have the right resources, or I have methods to transition resources. Maybe I need some extra for a year, but I don't need it after that. So do I really need to give them authorizations, or can I use that authorization for something else and just have the money to pay for it? So I think that's kind of a challenge that is really important, that our manpower guys are working closely with our budget guys and our programmers. What do we need in the future? How do we defend it? A big part of our resources is in labor, and it's in civilian labor, and it's in contract labor. So how do we make sure that we're defending those capabilities, articulating what the risk is if we don't have it? And so it's really key that our manpower guys are part of that whole process.
So I know that you were a former CP26 intern,
yes,
and you're a former CP26 careerist. So how has your experience as a CP26 intern and as a CP26 in your career prepared you for your current role as G8 here at TRADOC?
So in 1984, I was a Manpower and Force Management intern, and I worked at the time it was USA MARTA, now it's USA FISA, and actually was doing studies and analysis. And I got to tell you, that was the best start of everything, because it really wasn't about the manpower as much as it was about understanding what our Army does and how it does it, and more creative, innovative ways to do the work, leveraging best practices from others. I think what I learned about our Army as a manpower guy versus a manpower guy just doing stuff for the Army. And I believe that, when I was an intern, or, when I worked in 3 different commands, I've, had 10 GS-15 jobs in the different manpower fields. I kind of just took all of that as learning. Let me learn about the Army, and then let me use the expertise I'm gaining, and whether it's organizational design or it's manpower allocation or resourcing, to apply to what the Army needs. And I think that's one thing manpower guys don't always see themselves as very diverse, but they are, because they have to know all about their organization or all about their command and how work is done. And it's not as much about the business processes, but it's about leveraging all those business processes to help the Army get their mission done. So I think that one of the things that did is give me the diversity of knowledge on the Army, which certainly helped me. Also, the diversity in the corporate area and different levels, and whether you're at a headquarters level or you're at a FOA level or a command level or below, is the manpower field gives you that opportunity to do all those things. And then lastly, I think what the manpower field does, and many of our professionals don't really see it, is it really helps you diversify, because you are so closely tied to the controller field, because you're really the money that they're spending mostly on, across the Army other than acquisition. And you're really tied to the human capital, human resources field, because you're setting up the dynamics so that they can actually fill jobs or acquire talent or make determinations on where they're going to develop. And I think sometimes our manpower community sees themselves too stovepiped. And, when I talk and mentor to them, I'm like, well, you want to apply for a budget analyst job, you have to see yourself, gosh, that's what I've been doing already. I've been building these TDAs and allocating resources. You're already budgeting, but you have to see that work in that different shape. So I think that's a great thing about the manpower field, manpower community. And I know it helped me grow over time, but I was also a believer that you kind of had to go back and forth, use your talent, and then go be a controller or go be a planner. My first executive position was as a G14, which is personnel logistics engineering, which of course you would say, that doesn't have anything to do with manpower. How did that happen? Right? But all that history and doing different things and learning about our Army, I think really helped me do that. And I think that's something the manpower field does. It allows you to be very broad in your knowledge and expertise.
So what advice do you share with your TRADOC interns?
Yeah, so I think the couple of things that I share with the interns is one, is don't turn down an assignment. You may say, hey, I don't think that's really going to help me learn. Take it on anyway. I can remember as an intern, they needed somebody to just do briefing charts or develop a spreadsheet. And I was always the one to go in there and volunteer because I knew I was going to learn something from working with that analyst. And I was going to get involved in whatever that briefing was or project was because the boss would want you to learn. So I always would tell all my analysts and my interns, don't turn down an opportunity because you're going to learn from that opportunity. And I think that's one of the things that we expect our interns to do is to continuously learn. I think the other thing is be a good problem solver. Because one of the things they want from us, especially on a staff, is they need somebody to help them solve problems, to see them clearly, to define them, to look at options, to come up with innovative, creative ways, solutions to those issues. So be that problem solver. That's probably the favorite part of my job, even at this level, is to be a good problem solver, to look for alternatives and help our leaders in the field be able to get their job done without worrying about the resources or how it's going to happen. That's my job, to help them. So I think that the last thing would be to be a good collaborator, because we don't do it by ourselves. And you may think, oh, I'm a great intern and I can do this all by myself and I don't need anybody's help. Yeah, but you're not going to build your network. And one of the things about growing and developing and getting different assignments is that you're going to strengthen your network and you're going to have connections with people that are going to help you advance, but you're also going to be helping them. So I think that, there's the mandatory stuff, do your training, get it all done, right? Take those developmental assignments, but never turn down an assignment. Be collaborative and be a good problem solver, I think are the biggest things that I would tell my interns or even, the junior analysts out there. That's how you can move ahead.
And I would assume that when you collaborate with other people in the staff, you're not only obviously helping yourself professionally in terms of your work, but you're also creating a better product for that commander, for your boss, so they can make a more informed decision because you're getting information from the CP11s, from the CP10s, and various different people.
The operators, and especially in TRADOC at the staff level, the number of people that you have to deal with on many different issues is it's a lot, and you just have to learn that that's normal. It's even normal for me. That's normal. You got to kind of reach out and be able to pull it in because you're going to get to better answers.
And we don't really work in a vacuum these days anymore.
We can't, but some people tend to still. And so, that's on us as leaders to kind of say, you need to look for those opportunities, and you should want to work with other people and learn from them and have them learn from you. It doesn't matter if you're an intern and they're a senior analyst. They could still learn from you, and you have to be open to that discussion and insight, I think.
So let's switch gears here a little bit and talk about leadership and what, in your opinion, makes a good leader.
So I think there's lots of things that make a good leader, but I think one of the things is that they're engaged, right? So it's not all about sitting in your office and doing your work and waiting for somebody to come talk to you, that you're engaged, you understand what's going on with your workforce, you listen to your workforce, you modify behaviors because of what you hear. You have opportunities for your workforce to get to know you as a leader also. I mean, I think it's very important, and whether we're doing lunches or we're going out and bowling or, we're doing town halls or we do a lot of, I've set up small group training sessions, one for my leaders and one for my analysts, and it's like how to improve your interviewing skills. And you would say, well, do 14, 15s and colonels really need to do that? Yeah, they do, right? So do GS 5s, 7, 9s, 11s, and 12s, 13s. So finding ways that you can engage with them and make yourself accessible to them. I think being clear on your vision, what it is we're trying to achieve, and ensuring that everybody understands what their role is in achieving that, and how the work that they're doing aligns to our organizational, and whether it's the G8 or it's the TRADOC mission. I think being vested in talent management, in your sessions determination, in your development determination, who's going off to training, who's getting more education, ensuring that we're setting good performance standards and we're holding people accountable for those standards. And, that's something that's a kind of a cultural issue. Everybody thinks they're the top performer, but if everybody's the top performer, nobody is, right? So I think that, and then being able to assess your organization and say, hey, here's the things that I need to go and work on. I think, part of development is mentoring, and that's probably one of my favorite parts of my job, because I do, and whether it's I'm a female or I'm, 35 years of service or I'm a senior executive, I get a lot of people that want mentoring. And, mentoring is basically just listening and helping that person figure out what they want to do, and maybe opening up options to them. It's not taking on their job, it's not figuring it out. So I think that those are important things as a leader to be able to do. But I think lastly, you as a leader, you also have to be results focused. And you need to make sure that you have the right talent and they're empowered to do that kind of work, and that you embrace, they want to try something different, you want to be a little creative. So I think that's kind of what I think about when I think about leadership. And I think it's, leadership, you could see it, okay, that supervisor is a leader, but I believe everybody's a leader, and sometimes they're a leader of themselves, right? And I look at interns and I'm like, I know one of the ways that I was successful is because I could lead myself. I could understand what had to get done. I could look for different ways to do it. I could go off and do it. I could communicate with my peers or with my superiors and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Because when I was coming up as an intern, we were just getting computer software. And we didn't have, PowerPoint and Outlook and all those kind of things. And I would just jump in there and just try it. Say, oh, I think I can use this, what was the name of it? PC file, which was before Harvard Graphics even. And go out there and say, I think I could create that chart instead of drawing it, because we used to have to draw it with pens during a briefing. I think we can do that. And I think that our interns need to kind of be self-leaders. And we have to value that trait, that they want to go try to do something else and figure out a better way to do it. So I think all of us are leaders, with different responsibilities. But I think same kind of thing. You apply those same assessing and developing performance standards to yourself. It's just as important that that individual is doing that also as the leader.
Well, Ms. Helmerson, that's all the questions I have. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I love being a Manpower and Force Management professional. I still see myself as one. I may be in a CP11 job, but I am still a big advocate for it, and I have an opportunity to kind of share a lot of that with our CP11 community who don't necessarily have a lot of Manpower and Force Management direct experience. They may have managerial experience. So being able to share, hey, we have that talent base out there that is key to us being good controllers in the Army, and we have to kind of continue to find ways for us to work together. So I look forward to continuing that discussion with my colleagues.
Well, Ms. Helmerson, thank you very much. I know you're very, very busy, but I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope it helps.